time for the crossover. We got somebody very, very special on the line right now. Oh, I'm all for woman empowerment. And so is this beautiful woman right here. She's a lifelong volunteer and also the chairperson of the Council of Voluntary Social Services. I mean, she did that since, 2016? She got a whole list of stuff. Let me just bring her in. Saffrey Brown, Chief Impact Officer of the LEAP community. Are you there, beautiful?
Hi, Nikki. Yes, I'm here.
Hello, my soca friend.
Hi. How's it going?
It's going good. I hear that accent, man. I'm coming to Trinidad soon.
It's been 25 years and I still have the accent.
Oh, don't lose it. No, don't lose that. That's what makes you authentically, perfectly you. And I love it.
Thank you.
But let's talk about what you have going on. What exactly is the LEAP company and what exactly do you do?
So, I'm what you would call a development practitioner. I work in development.
Yeah.
My primary focus has been on local development. So I know you probably heard of international development specialists.
Mm-hmm.
My expertise is really in local development. So the LEAP company looks at sustainable development. We have two sort of areas that we look at it from. One is from the whole side of climate change and climate resilience.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's not my side.
Oh, okay.
The other side is the community sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
So how you help build and create and support sustainable communities. That's the side that I focus on. So it's really about working with people to create sustainable change at a sort of grassroots or at the community level.
Well, I got a big question because you're the perfect person to answer my headache of a question that I keep asking on air. I always wonder why we don't have more community centers because in my mind, a lot of community centers, if they're built the right way, can absolutely be self-sustainable. And I just don't get why we don't have more.
Yeah, so the thing is that, a lot of community centers have been built in Jamaican communities over the decades.
Yeah.
But they haven't been built on a sustainable model. So, once you build a space, somebody has to maintain it. Somebody has to pay the electricity bill, the water, somebody has to paint it. And so, again, what we do is really look at how you create sort of sustainable spaces in communities. So I would have piloted a project back in 2007 with Jamaica National, which was a Source Community Resource Center. Mm-hmm. And it was really about how you create a sustainable community space.
Yes.
And so the Source was built as a sort of community business, owned by the community, run by the community, for the benefit of the community.
Exactly,
but it was a business. And because that, we did that center, we showed proof of concept, JM then went on to do 4 others. So we have 5 Source centers. And
that are functioning now?
Functioning now. Most of them are functioning now. I think there's only one of the 5 that is not functioning. But the one in Savannah Lamar, we did a Source in Savannah Lamar on Barracks Road. That one is very much open every day. We did one with Breads in Treasure Beach. That one is open. We did one with the St. Anne Chamber in Ocherius. That one is open. And we did one in Augustown, which was the pilot.
What makes them sustainable? So what makes them self-sustainable?
Well, they're designed from the get-go to be economically and financially sustainable. So you look at the community partners. You put in basic business services, right? So things like, rentable space. If you look at the Source in Savannah Lamar, it's got real estate agents in there. There's a JBDC Jambic Center in there to provide entrepreneurial support. There is an auditorium for rental. There is a media cafe.
Nice.
And so it generates revenue. So
what about a garden, community gardens? Maybe they can sell stuff.
We actually had a really good community garden at the one in Sav, which was done by Peace Corps, because again, we work with Peace Corps volunteers, and you get just different partners.
Nice.
And that ran really well for a few years. I think it's a little rundown at the moment.
Yeah.
But, the greenhouse and the infrastructure is still there, so they can pick that back up. Yeah. So you're talking about, centers being open now, what is that, 14 years?
Yeah.
And again, this is a lot of the work I did in the past was working on programs that shut down.
Yeah.
And it was so deflating.
What causes them to shut down?
Right?
What causes them to shut down? What are we doing wrong? What can we avoid going forward? What causes these great structures, once built, to break down?
Well, it's not even just the structures. If you think about community programming,
Yeah.
Their projects by themselves have a start and an end date, right? We always treat sort of social provision as something that you can do for 3 years and stop. But the truth is, unless you have, eradicated poverty or, completely stopped teenage pregnancy or completely cut out, you're going to continuously have to do programs. And so, to a large extent, the way that we design programs in and of themselves is flawed from the point of design, because they're designed to be a 3-year project or a 5-year project, versus really looking at how you create sustainable programming.
Yes.
Part of that is that you have to look generally at, is there a way to do it so that there's revenue, right? Looking at the social enterprise movement now, if you look at guys like Def Can Coffee, right?
Yeah.
So Def Can Coffee, who we all know, we were really fortunate to work with them in their early stages. You could have continued doing an entrepreneurship program for members of the deaf community. And then after 3 years, your funder would have stopped. What they did is they decided to set up a business.
Right.
They decided to set up a revenue-generating business that is based off of a growth model. And this idea that you could actually take social provision and grow it. This whole idea that actually, you know what, we can provide not just for 10 people who are deaf this year, but maybe next year we can provide for 20.
Even more.
And then we can generate employment for 30 and then 40. Imagine this whole idea that it's not just businesses that can grow. Social provision can also grow. We can provide greater social nets. We can provide more opportunities for people with disabilities. We don't have to actually be limited by a finite amount of funding.
Right.
And so it's really about getting really creative thinking people. It's about getting the MBA students and graduates and getting business people and getting people with creativity, innovators and problem solvers into the space.
Absolutely.
To start looking at it differently and to say, no, I can't be involved in something that in 3 years' time it's going to end.
Yes,
and then
I don't get that.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then also this whole idea of mainstreaming, right? So if you look at nonprofits and the NGO community, NGOs are really there to provide for very sort of specific groups, but also to pilot initiatives to show that they work. But then there has to be a certain amount of support from government to mainstream programs that work. If you look at something like mustard seed communities, they get 25% of their funding from government. The rest they have to raise themselves, right? And they take care of a huge amount of young people with disabilities and, all these various conditions. And so, part of a sustainable model is that it receives government funding sustainably, because the government in and of itself earns revenue from taxes. And has a
very much.
responsibility
Let's talk about all the revenue from the money that's been collected from COVID violations. I keep screaming for where's that money going? Because we really need it in these community centers and for the kids. And just to play off of what you've been saying, and I hope people have been listening, it really is up to each community, once these community centers are in there, to show the fact that you want to keep it going. It's not for anyone to sit down and wait for the government or somebody to bring in free money. If each community would identify leaders within the community that really care and find those ways to keep things sustained, whether it is growing a community garden and selling it. Maybe you have somebody who's a seamstress and can teach seamstress classes in there. Same time, maybe repair people clothes in the neighborhood and make money doing that. There's a million ways to make it sustainable, but I think what's missing are the forward thinkers that know or figure out how to reach out to people like you to get involved and really stick to being involved.
Yeah, I think so. Remember that money is spent in communities. It's spent by national agencies and funders and donors. Now, funders and donors can, to a large extent, they can understand the complexities around sustainability, right?
Yeah.
So, to a large extent, they will look to how they can support building a more sustainable model in communities. So let's talk, for example, a funder that gives you money to build a community center, right? Now, in this day and age, we shouldn't be building any community facilities that are not off the grid, that don't have, solar, photovoltaics, electricity. Why are we burdening a community by giving them a community center, and then they have to figure out how to pay $100,000 electricity bill every month?
A ridiculous electricity bill that shouldn't even be there. Let's be honest.
Correct. Brown water systems, right? Water harvesting. Designing buildings the way that we used to in terms of Caribbean architecture that were built for ventilation, so they're not these heat traps, so you have less energy.
Yeah.
All of this is part of the responsibility of funders and donors and government to make sure that the policies around sort of community interventions allow for sustainability. So it's a community, but it's also at the national level. It's policy, it's funders, it's donors.
Isn't it possible?
It's the national agencies.
I mean, would you be able to answer? Is it possible? Does the government have enough power? I'm assuming they should, to be able to even address people like JPS to say, you see certain institutions, like the institutions that deal with our kids, the schools, the hospitals, the community centers that deal with community, you have to give them a break with this overpriced electricity bill that you send to people. I mean, isn't this something the government can do?
You know, Nikki, I don't think it's that simple. I mean, sure, maybe the government can do that. I don't know. But what I would rather like to see the government do is to make sure that when they build any building moving forward, that it is built for better ventilation, better energy,
solar power.
Conservation. There's no way we should be doing inefficient buildings that are sort of energy inefficient in this day and age. And there's no way we should be burdening communities with those kinds of costs.
Yeah.
So I do think that, and again, this goes back to impact investment, right? This whole idea of how you invest funds. Now, globally, you have impact investors all over the world that are saying, well, I'm only going to invest in responsible investments, right? I'm going to invest in renewables. I'm going to invest in, this new mall, but the whole mall has to be, green energy.
Yeah, a lot of people like that,
investing. Right. So the financiers, the investors are starting to stipulate globally. I mean, huge equity firms are starting to divest so that their investments go towards impact investments, which is more responsible, more sustainable investments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to separate the sort of social world from the business world, and more kind of proposition that it's actually a merging of the two, right? Because if you look at the whole idea of triple bottom line development, it's this idea that you can't have sustainable development if you don't have economic development, social development, and environmental development, right?
Yes.
So if you take any one, they're called the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit. You take any P out the equation, you don't have a sustainable model.
Nope.
So you don't have a sustainable community, you don't have a sustainable business, you don't have a sustainable nation, and you don't have a sustainable world. Think about it. People, planet, profit. Take any one of those three out the equation, it's not a sustainable model. Now, some people may benefit, right? So businesses may benefit if they don't consider environment, right? They could just consider profit and their people, but they're not considering environment. They may benefit, but society as a whole doesn't. You don't have and if society starts to collapse, so too does your business.
Yep.
Right? Because now your business costs have gone up. You've got great environmental problems. You've got flooding. You've got issues with waste. You've got people can't come to work because they can't get to work because there's too much flooding or whatever it is. So you have to look at it as a sort of merging of economic and social principles along with environmental, and recognize that all decisions that you make, whether it is at the community level, at the national level, must factor in all three. And if you only factor in one or two, you are invariably creating a problem that will have to be solved down the line.
It's way more than a problem. We got to think about these future generations and stop being so selfish, I would say. But we don't have a lot of time, unfortunately. And I hope you come back on a Wednesday to talk with us some more, because this topic and everything you do is so important. Saffrey Brown. Now, for the listeners, before you go, what would you say to the listeners, how they can get involved, not only in what you're doing, but just as a nation, so we can get in a better position than the one we're in now?
What I would say is, we all have a part to play. We don't all have the same part to play, but we all have a part to play. I remember years ago, a friend of mine was studying to become a masseuse, and she wanted to volunteer and come and do some reading with kids in school. And I said, no, don't do that. I said, you have this incredible skill, which is massaging. We have a problem with the elderly who are feeling very isolated. They don't get touched anymore. Nobody touches the elderly. This is when I was living in London. And I asked her to come and just do shoulder and head massages for the elderly so that they could feel that sense of touch, right? So she used her talent, her skill, to come and support them. So, this isn't about all of us going and doing painting of schools and this and that, but it is about what is our skill, what is our talent, and what is it that we can do for somebody else. It can be small, it can be huge. It can be sustained, it can be today, it can be tomorrow, but play your part, your special part.
Absolutely. That is a beautiful piece of advice. Where can people follow you and all of the work you're doing?
So, they can follow CVSS JA. We're, on Instagram and Twitter. So they can follow the organization there and more of what we're doing, and they can follow me on Twitter. I'm not very active, though, because Twitter's a little too controversial for me. There's too much arguments in there, so I actually don't go on very often.
I like real life, too, Mama. I'm like you. Just give me real life.
I know, right? So I would say follow CVSS, JA on Twitter and Instagram, and stay in touch.
All right. We'll talk to you again really soon, Saffrey. And please keep doing all the work that you're doing because we need more heroes like you, or should I say, sheroes.
Thanks, Nikki. And you keep up the amazing work as well, girl.
I will, Mama. Never stop. And I'll see you at the next carnival. Let's go.
Yeah, man.
All right. I got a couple of moments, so let's go with this right here.
You know, hear it. Call it piano.
We're going to take this to the break right here. Burn them out, burn them out, burn them out.
So we can keep it burning. Them a burn, like them to learn. Now we have to turn. Babylon is burning down. Babylon is burning down. Yo, this is an anthem for the real ghetto youths out the street. Who feels it knows life hard like concrete. Straight up on the mission, we no bow and we no lane. Rasta kick down them door for make the youth them come in.